What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about OnyxCoin today. The purpose of this video is with our newfound lows to compare XCN USD and XCN BTC to the Bitcoin price as well, and see if we can't figure out what the proper expectations are for OnyxCoin's next high, and also for its all-time high by the end of the cycle. What's preposterous, or what makes the most sense as far as that goes. We're going to come up with macro high targets. So if that sounds good to you, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's get into it. But before we do, I do want to go over a little bit of this short-term stuff, right? Just look at this here. Some things that I'm very bullish on, right? If we're looking at the weekly time frame here, you know, the weekly MACD, we've got 3 days, 9 hours left in this week. At the moment, we're actually building bearish momentum. If by the end of this week, we can come back, we're down about 21% so far. If we can come back and leave a pretty big wick behind, if we can move up over the next couple of days here, back up to 007, it's not that far away, 0.008, something like that. If we could close this week green, or at least not too red, then we do prevail with our bullish divergence on this histogram, and that's what I'd like to see. It's not a requirement, but overall we kind of do have bullish divergence, don't we? We've got these higher lows building out throughout here, and then we've got lower lows building out throughout here as well. There is some decaying and bearish momentum, a definite shift being observed here on the weekly time frame. Help out that shift, move the price higher. Don't be building here. Actually, just be what's the word I'm looking for? Retracting. You know, higher lows, not lower lows. That's what we want to see. So come back up by the end of the week. That'd be nice to see. XCN BTC paints a little bit of a different picture than what we're getting here on the US dollar pair, right? Here, we're kind of finding our low at the moment. Maybe this is the low. Maybe we go lower. In the middle of nowhere's land. We did find our low like right above this high here, and that, in my opinion, is good enough. We don't have to go lower. From our all-time low to our cycle high, we're right at the 0.5 as well on the fibs. That's a good enough area to bounce. A lot of cryptos have found significance on their 0.5 actually this whole cycle, to be fair. So definitely enough reasons to bounce here on the US dollar pair, let alone the bullish divergence. As long as this week closes up higher, I think we'll have bullish divergence. If not, you see how here, from here to here, we're not diverging anymore. Now we're building bearish momentum. You don't want that. You want it to continue to diverge. So let's come back up by the end of this week. That's the goal there. But on XCN BTC, we are finding support right here at prior resistance points, prior key areas of resistance here, here, and here. Okay, very significant level there. We take the low to the high of XCN to BTC, and we're bouncing right off the golden ratio. It's right at that same level. It's perfect. It's literally perfect. I'm actually kind of curious. What about this low to high here? Right at the 1414. Typically what you do with the 1414 is you'll wick below it and then you'll close above it, just like we're doing here. So perfect. This would imply some kind of move back to this area, something like this or here, right? If XCN to BTC moves here, we'll even calculate this in. Let's factor this in with the US dollar price for the coming days and weeks, let alone what we have in the months and by the end of the cycle to go as well. A lot of reasons to expect support here. We haven't even gotten to the best part on the weekly time frame here. The bullish divergence is immaculate, you guys. It's immaculate, right? Low here, higher low, higher low, higher low, just all the way throughout. Since June of this year, we've been getting higher lows in our weekly MACD histogram. We've got lower lows here. That is severe bullish divergence, my friends. That's severe bullish divergence right there. And that would take us back to prices to levels that are up here or beyond. And I don't know about you guys, but looking at this here, looking at this, if we were to move back to this level, I don't know about you, it seems to me like we're breaking out of this trend, right? Move back to this level. Why this level? Because it's just above where the divergence began. And that's typically what you do, is you'll move back above where the divergence began. Doesn't mean we have to, but just a thought there. Weekly RSI is pretty weak, right? Here we are. Lowest levels that we've seen really this whole cycle since our cycle lows. Or not even our cycle lows, actually. This is versus Bitcoin, though. Still, some of the lowest readings that we've seen. Bullish divergence on the stochastics. Definitely in an area to expect to find support, okay? Now that we have that foundation, let's do the boring part. Okay, let's do the boring part. I say boring, and I actually genuinely like doing this part. I actually have fun doing this. I just mean boring because I gotta imagine it's probably boring for some of you out there. Anyways, XCN BTC. Where are we gonna go? Where are we going to go? Because if we can understand where XCN BTC goes, we can input those numbers here, calculate it based on where the Bitcoin price is going to go, what we assume the Bitcoin price is going to do, or even what it's at now, and then match that up with the fair price for the US dollar on the XCN USD pair. So XCN BTC, I'm going to do this in a bit of a backwards fashion. I want to start with the long-term stuff and then finish with the short-term stuff. It might be better to build from the short-term stuff and then up. Let's do the short-term and then the long-term. Okay, so from here, from a low to a high, golden ratio, first and foremost, the typical thing that you would do is go to your 382.5 area. Now, when you move up here, does that mean that we're breaking out higher? No. So oftentimes you find resistance here and then you continue to build lower. But we are expecting that you find support here and that this is the low. So perhaps we move up to the 382, pull back to the 0.5, and then continue to rally, something like that. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we just pop from here and we go all the way up to the 236. It's kind of hard to say. I do think we have a date with destiny with this price. So I am going to call for prices just above the 382 on the XCN BTC pair. I'm not going to plug in numbers that are just above here. I do expect that we get there. So let's plug in the minimum number, then the 382 itself, which is 6 zeros. That's what the negative E negative 6 means. 6 zeros, 12941. Let's just put that number in there. Okay, so 0.12345 zeros, 14921. Is that what it was? 12941. 12941. Multiply that XCN BTC price. Let's multiply it by the current price, right? I like to do this because odds are if XCN BTC is moving up, XCN USD is moving up. If XCN USD is moving up, Bitcoin is likely moving up as well, or at least not moving down. So when we input the current price, this effectively tells us, by the way we're doing analysis here, that we could expect a price above whatever output we get, right? So 103K. Let's just round up and say 103K, because I doubt, again, the logic here is that when XCN versus BTC gets up to this level, I doubt Bitcoin will be at 103K. It'll probably be more like at 110K, but we'll see. 103, right? So that'd be 1.3 cents. So we are due for some kind of a move potentially that would be then not at 1.3 cents, but above 1.3 cents. If we look at the US dollar pair, are there any areas of significance that might be just above 1.3 cents as far as the retracement goes that we can consider, right? Well, 1.3 cents here is our 382. It's right there, 1.33 cents. So likely this move will take us above our 382. We might move all the way up to about 1.67 cents then, or even to our golden ratio right up at 2.5 to 2.1 cents. You guys, the bounce from here for XCN is going to be epic, right? The numbers that we're talking about right now, and this is just the beginning. This is just the first phase, right? We're starting low and then we're going high. We're talking about a minimum of a 100% pop. Likely we are going to see a 200 to 300% move here by the end of November, if not more. Okay, that's what I would think, because again, we're at the golden ratio, we have bullish divergence, blah blah blah. We move up here, we're breaking out of our downtrend, okay, and we likely do just go right above the 382 again, because that's where the divergence formed, was all the way over here, right? That's where it formed there. I also wonder, just from a low to a high here real quick, what are we doing? That's also right there where your golden ratio is of this retracement. It's perfect. It's literally, and prior areas of resistance here, prior areas of support here, right in that zone, guys. It's perfect. It is perfect. Even a little stopping point back here. Of course, we're going to stop there. It's perfect. So I really do, that gives me confidence then, guys. What's crazy is that the US dollar pair, because again, this is just calculating the price versus Bitcoin right now at its current price. Likely when XCN moves up, Bitcoin will be at a higher price, which means XCN USD by this calculation would be at 1.33 cents. That's above the 382. We likely go above the 382, and whenever you do that, you typically expect either the 0.5 or maybe just the golden ratio itself. We're going to see a rapid reaction to this 1.7 cent to 2.5 cent area, somewhere in that zone over the coming weeks is what my expectation would be. Because don't forget, we don't just have bullish divergence on the weekly time frame on the BTC chart, we also have it on the USD chart as well, and on the stochastics. Anyway, so that might be what's next. That's kind of encouraging. I think that's very encouraging. Okay, the thought here then after would be from a high to a low. Whenever XCN versus BTC sees new all-time highs, or not new all-time highs, but new relevant highs, where might it go? You know, for a long time we assumed that we would go all the way up here, if not higher, right? And why did we say here? Well, for one, it's the golden ratio, right? The golden ratio of this high to low move. Oh wait. Oh, oops. Oops. I didn't mean to draw that. I meant to draw it here. High to low here. For one, it's the 1886200 level here. It also ties in very well with this low point here. It just makes sense. There's a lot of significance at this area, right? We found resistance here, right here, at this low point. It made a lot of sense. And then you look at this move here, you compare it to this last move. It's actually pretty comparable. It made a lot of sense to consider this as our next price target. But unfortunately now we are lower. We're dramatically lower, right? So that same movement from this level, because I don't know about you guys, but I don't expect that we're going to make a move like this by the end of the year, all the way up here. I mean, maybe we make that kind of move by the end of the year. But again, in comparison to what we've seen already, that's pretty freaking huge, and it's a pretty fast move. It's not that it can't happen. It's just I would think it's less likely to happen. Most likely we get some kind of move that's like this or even smaller than this. But now it's from this level. What levels might we interact with? Well, the 1272 to the 1618, this is the primary target zone in itself, and a move just like this move here, or what we were expecting before, might take us right above the 1414. My problem with this is that if we take a line right here, we put it at the top of this here, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere's land. So again, what we're trying to do here is figure out what's the next phase. When we do take out these highs, because we will take out these highs, where might we go? What makes the most sense? Does it make the most sense that we're just going to be on a nonstop party train all the way up here? Probably not. Probably not, because again, that kind of movement in comparison to this, I mean, it's so much larger. It's crazy. And I'm not saying that we can't see that overall, but in one fell swoop like this, I don't think so. We're probably going to find turbulence beforehand. So where are some good areas to find turbulence beforehand? Based off the fibs, a great area would be the golden ratio. The golden ratio here. Unfortunately for us, the golden ratio doesn't line up with anything. Oh, but you know what? We're not even using the right fibs now, right? These fibs are actually all based off of what we assumed them to be. Now we have these lows here. So the golden ratio here actually does line up pretty well with these lows over here. It's not perfect, but it does line up pretty well with those lows there. Okay. The 1414 is just above this here, and then the 1272 lines up pretty perfectly with this high point here. For a long time, we rejected the thought that we'd find resistance here. It didn't make a whole lot of sense because this is our low. What, we're going to break above this and we're just going to get a tiny little move up there? No, that's probably not what's going to happen. It didn't make any sense. But from this level, from the level that we're at now, from this low, XCN BTC, I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm just going to take this out here. We're going to delete we can leave the golden ratio. We'll delete the 1414 area, okay? And we'll delete this as well. It'd make a lot of sense to stop at that 1272, which unfortunately is just above this high, but still pretty dramatic difference, right? That's a pretty big move. If we take this move here and we assume we go all the way up to the 1272, maybe by the end of this year, that kind of a movement is very compatible with what we've seen before, right? And again, we're talking about by the end of the year, not in 2 weeks like this happened, but more in like the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks, right? Something like that, the rest of the year. So a longer amount of time for that to happen. Let's input this number. Let's stop explaining the logic behind it. I do think that we're going to get to this level, and I do think that we will even see higher levels than that, but we'll get to that, okay? Inputting this level here, that's 6 zeros. For those of you that can't see it, I can barely see it because this line's here. 6 zeros, 84545. So let's input that number. 6 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 84545, right? Is that right? 84545. Yeah, that's nice. 6 zeros, yes, and then multiply that. This time I don't want to measure it by Bitcoin's current price. We could do that. I mean, we could do it. Let's do it real quick, I suppose. 103,000. 8.7 cents. Effectively, what this is telling us here is that if XCN BTC gets to this level, the 1272, right here, and Bitcoin were at this exact same price, then XCN USD would be worth something about here, right? 8.8 cents. 8.7 cents there. And that makes sense, right? That's the 1272. That makes a lot of sense. But what doesn't make sense is that XCN versus US dollar would move all the way up to here, and then Bitcoin's only at 103,000. That doesn't make sense. Bitcoin will likely be, by the time XCN USD is up here, Bitcoin will likely be at new all-time highs. How high will it be? I don't know. But let's just say it's at new all-time highs. Okay, who cares where the price is exactly, right? The current all-time high is 126K. So let's base it off of that number, 126K. Let's base it off of that. Is it safe to assume if OnyxCoin is breaking out of this year-long consolidation phase and we're all the way up at 8 cents, is it fair to assume that Bitcoin is probably at new all-time highs? I feel like that's fair. I don't think that I'm asking for much here, right? 126K. 126. Let's do that. Hold on. Okay. Again, same input from the XCN BTC chart, the 1272. But now we're inputting a different price for the Bitcoin price, okay, to get a different level, a sensible level for what the US dollar price for XCN would be at this level here in the 1272. When we break out of this overall consolidation phase and we stop here, likely for resistance, an area that we outright rejected for months, but now it makes a lot of sense. It didn't make sense before, now it makes a lot of sense because we're all the way down here, right? This kind of a movement, right? Before we were forecasting a move all the way up here to this zone. Now that we're down here, we're forecasting that same move, right? But so it's going to take us lower. And now that lines up coincidentally right here with this high. So anyways, again, explaining the thought logic here. Multiplying that by the perceived outcome, Bitcoin will likely be at a new all-time high. So even this will be a conservative number, 10.6 cents. So in other words, XCN BTC, whenever we break out of this range, whenever we see a higher high, whenever we top off next at what seems to be, in my opinion, the most likely spot, because we're not going to top off here. Why would we top off in the middle of nowhere's land? I mean, perhaps we wick a little bit above there, but we're not going to stop in the middle. You know what I mean? We didn't stop any random place here. We stopped right at the base of this range. It might make sense that we stop right at the top of it or at the base here. But again, I don't see us having a bigger move overall. This was the perceived outcome for a long time. I don't think now that we're down here, we're just going to see a bigger move. That doesn't seem logical to me. Inevitably, we'll get there. But again, I'm just repeating myself. I think it's a bit redundant at this point. Let's just get on with it. 10 cents. 10.6 cents. So XCN USD, 10.6 cents. Again, as a conservative target, this is a very conservative target. What's a price that lines up with US dollar that's just above 10.6 cents? Well, 12 cents. So then, by the end of this year, what we have finally concluded to, I think, is that XCN to 12 cents or higher is a very viable thought. From the current price, 12 cents or higher brings in an 18 to a 20x. And could we go to 18.8 cents? Sure. What if Bitcoin's not at 126K? What if by the time XCN BTC is here, Bitcoin's at 150K? What if that's the case? And because I do think that Bitcoin's next kind of stopping point is 150 to 160K. You know, let's just do that. Let's say we're at 150K. We're being conservative. Now let's be a little bit more, maybe not conservative. I don't even feel like we're overestimating here, right? That's 12.6 cents. XCN USD, 12.6 cents, right? This, again, not being conservative, not being overestimative, just kind of being more realistic where Bitcoin will be. It's a pretty realistic price. 12.6 cents makes a lot of sense because, again, 12.7 cents almost is right above this 141.4. And typically with the 141.4, you wick above there and then you close below. So a lot of sense to be made there. As far as 18 cents goes, I don't know. I mean, we could see it. Maybe. Maybe that's what we do. Let's put a line here. We'll put a line here and we'll look back in time real quick. Right. We don't have the all-time history here. Let's go on the all-time history chart here. We'll just redo it. It's not that hard, right? We got time. We got patience. High to low here. Put a line right above the 141.4 because that's pretty common. Is that we would go just above it there, and the 1618 there. Looking back in time, I mean, it's our all-time high area, so it makes sense that we would stop probably finding resistance in our all-time high area. Could we wick? You know, maybe this calculation's accurate, but maybe we wick higher than this number here. Maybe we have a solid wick. Maybe XCN does wick. It's possible that we see 18 cents, but if we do, I would say anything above like 12.7 cents, anything above this number here, it'll be very short-lived, right? Because the only way that we could see that number by the time XCN BTC is here is if the Bitcoin price is probably dramatically higher, right? Let's just see. Let's say Bitcoin's at 180K, because I do think that we could see $180,000 by the end of this year. Hold on. I got to help my daughter with something real quick. Hold on, guys. Oh, hold. You guys hear me? I think you can hear me, right? So that same price in Bitcoin versus the Bitcoin price itself, 180K, that puts us at 15 cents. So again, I'm having a hard time seeing us being at 18 cents at this point by the end of the year. It makes a lot of sense to me that we would be above 12 cents by the end of this year, but 18 cents unfortunately is not in the wheelhouse. If anybody's watching this video and you're coming up with smart aleck remarks saying, what happened to 26 to 32 cents? What happened to the price, bro? We're at lower levels. You know what I mean? You want me to just keep the same price predictions for every movement that goes against what we thought would happen? No, you have to adjust, right? Whenever things change, you have to change, and that's the whole purpose of this video here. Okay. Again, I think through this we can sensibly deduce that XCN will be above 10 cents. It likely will not be above 15 cents by the end of 2025. Likely being the key word. Because if not, again, where's the only other area that makes sense to stop here versus Bitcoin? Well, it's not right above here. It's not any of these areas. It'd be the golden ratio all the way up here. And that level is 5017. Hold on, let me delete this. 1757. 175748. 175748. Let's see, actually. 175748. Okay. Let's pretend that XCN versus BTC went all the way up to that golden ratio zone right there. Let's pretend that it went all the way up here by the end of 2025, which I'm starting to think is not going to happen, but let's just say it does happen. By the end of 2025, we're up here. Okay? We multiply that by the perceived outcome of what Bitcoin's price will be by the end of 2025. I feel very confident in saying that 150K is an outcome that we'll see. We'll see probably higher than that, but again, being conservative at first, that's a 26-cent price. So is it possible for XCN to see a 26-cent price or higher by the end of the year? Yes, it would just require that XCN versus BTC sees a more robust move here than it did back here. We would have to see such a robust move that it takes us all the way up to this area. And it's not that I don't think we can get there. I do think that we can get there. It just, to me, makes the most sense that from here, we probably stop here, consolidate by the end of the year, and then next year we make that trek higher. Does that make sense, right? I don't think we're just going to do it all in one fell swoop. We're gonna make a move up, consolidate probably between this 1272 and the top here, which if we consolidate between this 1272 and the top here, we consolidate right here going into the end of the year and the beginning of 2026. That's literally the same consolidation phase that we saw back here. The only area of significance throughout this whole drop was this area here, and that was where we found resistance. To me, it just doesn't make sense that we bust through that. So again, can we see 26 cents by the end of the year? Sure, it's possible. Anything's possible, right? But that would require that XCN versus BTC sees a more robust movement than it has this whole cycle. And as much as I want to believe that's going to happen, I don't believe that that's going to happen. I would love to be wrong. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. I was talking to one of my buddies about this. He's like, it's great because whenever I'm wrong, he's like, I'm bearish right now in the market. So if I'm wrong, I'm making money. It's like, that's great. Yeah, that's the best position to be in. It's better to be wrong and make money than to be wrong and be found wanting, be left wanting, to be expecting something more, right? To get your expectations hurt. XCN BTC suggesting then that by the end of the year we're probably going to be above 10 cents but below 15 cents. Can we all get on board with that? And if we line up this with a high to a low, the target then that makes the most sense to me would be about 12 to 13 cents. Okay, that's what I'm seeing by the end of the year. XCN US dollar. Now end of cycle. This is where things get a little bit more exciting, right? We're saving the best for the end. So I do think Bitcoin will see a $500,000 price. I do believe that we'll see a $500,000 price by the end of the. Hold on, you guys. So I had to talk to the family. Let's see. What were my thoughts? I think Bitcoin will see a $500,000 price by the end of the year, but likely, as it typically goes, Bitcoin tops off before altcoins do, right? Like here, we topped off in, you stopped here in like April. The average altcoin topped off here in May, right? Bitcoin tops off like a month before. So if Bitcoin does hit $500,000 by the end of this cycle, like I think it will, likely it'll be lower. Let's assume that it's lower. Let's assume it's like 10 to 20% lower. That would imply then a $460,000 to a $400,000 price in Bitcoin. So let's just input those numbers there, okay? 400. We'll start off with a $400,000 price by the end of the year, and multiply that by the perceived outcome of XCN BTC. Now this is where things get tricky. Okay, this is where things get interesting, because if we're consolidating here, if things go the way I think they're going to go, you know, we consolidate here in this area like this. We're up here by the end of the year, but then we're consolidating like this. Where will the next area be? We could stop. I mean, this golden ratio might be the cycle high for XCN BTC. Maybe we push on through. Are we going to see new all-time highs altogether? I don't know if I see that happening. I don't know if I see that happening. But let's input that. Let's pretend that we did see new all-time highs. What might that mean? 5 zeros, just so that we can get a range of what we're dealing with here as far as possibilities go. If this comes up with a number that's ridiculous, then we know, okay, we probably don't see new all-time highs, and that allows us to structure our predictions based off of the extensions that are left over and the retracements that are left over. That makes sense. So I hope that makes sense. I know what I'm saying. I just don't know if you know what I'm saying. Five zeros. 700,795. 5 zeros. 700,795. 700,795. Okay, 95 there. So that price would give us a $2.80 price for OnyxCoin. So we know right now that that's not going to happen. XCN will not see that. Puts it over 100 billion or over 80 billion dollars at least. That's too high. That's too high. Too high of a market cap valuation for this coin in its first bull market. Too high. I think XCN can get to an $80 billion valuation. I think it can get to a $100 billion valuation, but not this cycle. It's too high for this cycle, I think. So 280 off the table, which then tells us that XCN BTC new all-time highs are likely off the table as well. So let's work our way down. Let's do. And we were doing the 400,000 too. We're being conservative with the price too, assuming that Bitcoin's at a 400K price here. Some people might think 400K, that's not conservative. Okay, maybe we can wind that down a little bit. I think 400K is conservative, but we're gonna keep it there. This is based off of my expectations, right? This is my TA, so we're gonna base it off of my expectations. $400,000, and making sense out of it here. The only next logical area would be something between 50309 and 5039 itself. Let's do something that's on the lower end. Let's do 50309,777. Okay, 50309. Was that what it was? 309. 309 Okay, that number times 400,000 gives us a price of $1.23, which actually has been a target that we've considered in itself for XCN USD. $1.23 from here, high to low, would put us right here. Which $1.23, again, not financial advice, not a financial advisor. This is a rough estimate. $1.23 doesn't line up anywhere with our fibs that are at least significant fibs, right? We can't really make sense out of that. Let's take the all-time high, and let's take the low here. And again, it's not that all these numbers have to make sense, so when they don't make sense, we know that we're wrong. No, we're expecting a lot of these numbers to not make sense until we hit things that do make sense, so then we can lean on those, right? That's how I would look at it. So if this number doesn't make sense, $1.23 that we came up with, something's off here, right? We're either off in our assumption of where XCN BTC is going to go, or we're off in our assumption of where the Bitcoin price is going to go. Either way, right, $1.23, it's off, but there must be a close approximation to this that makes sense. So if this white line here is $1.23, what are the next areas that make the most sense? Well, to the downside, we have 82 cents, which is actually coming in line with the 2272 right there at 77 cents. So 80 cents, 90 cents, somewhere around there makes sense to me. You know, we can wick a little bit above there. It doesn't have to be right there. Rejection off of that dollar psychological zone makes sense. Okay, so that's a good minimum by the end of the cycle, I would say. Let's say that's a good minimum to expect by the end of the cycle from the current price. That would then imply, I mean, that's still over a 100x from here. That's crazy. That's wild stuff. And maybe as far as minimums go, we can count on other things as minimums too. Let's just see. We could, you know, like a good minimum might be here at like 33 cents or even 20 cents maybe by the end of the cycle. I think that 30 to 40 cents is a good minimum to have, like just logically speaking, because that's a 50x to a 60x. I expect OnyxCoin to outperform the average altcoin, and the average altcoin is expected to do about a 20 to a 25x. So this makes the most sense to me. I don't think it'll perform on average with the average altcoin. That would put it here, right? That'd put it at its all-time highs. I think we'll see new all-time highs. So just thinking in the aspects of what is logical to me, it would really make the most sense for the minimum to be 33 to 43 cents. But just off of the calculations that we're getting, the minimum, I feel absurd saying this, but the minimum is 120, 130 something X actually. And maybe that's true, maybe that's not, but based off of the math, based off of what we're doing here, that makes the most sense because, again, we got $1.23 on the conservative side, estimating a $400,000 Bitcoin priced in at the lower ends of what we assume is feasible here for XCN to BTC, okay? And then we take that approximation and we go to the next level down. That'd make the most sense. It's the 1272 to the 2272. If we were to go to the next level up, that's $1.60 to $1.80, maybe even $2, somewhere around there. And now we're getting into 200 to 300x territory, which I know sounds crazy, but guys, these numbers are making sense. At least to me, they're making sense. Let's keep going. Let's plug in some other numbers. I want to plug in this golden ratio. I want to plug in 5 zeros, 1757 again. Let's do that. Okay. 17, where are you? 1757. There you are. But now let's measure you versus $400,000. If you guys are enjoying the video, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's get into it. Okay, 70 cents. 70 cents would be a good minimum there for BTC, for XCN USD, and 70 cents is very close to this target here. So I really do. And what's great about that is we took the minimum here. Right, I think by the end of the cycle, XCN versus BTC, by the end of the cycle, at a minimum, we would expect to interact with this low. Okay, that could be your bull cycle high for XCN BTC is right here. We input that number to a $400,000 Bitcoin, which is a 20% deficit from where I believe its high will be. XCN tops off after Bitcoin, right? That should give us about a 70-cent price. And again, with a margin of error being implied here heavily because we're just forecasting the future, 70 cents is very close to 77. It's very close to 82 cents. And then again, even if we're off to the upside, 42 to 33 cents, that's so far away, but that's a very safe assumption, man. I mean, if we're way off, even to a pessimistic effect, a 50x to a 70x is very likely with this thing, if not more. I really do think we have 100x potential, if not more, at this level. 100x to 300x potential. Or really, it's like 126x to 300x potential. We'll see how it goes by the end of the cycle, but I don't really think I have anything else that I want to say. I hope all of this makes sense as far as why we measured what areas with what, right? I know that I've drawn a lot of scribbles here and there, so it's a lot of noise, but again, we basically took, not basically, quite literally, we took the measurements of this level here, and then of not even this range, not even the top end of this range, because we're trying to be conservative. We took the very bottom of this range here, okay? We're assuming that we don't see new all-time highs versus BTC, and I think we're safely assuming that, okay? Taking into account that by the end of the year, we might see expansion. We break out of this, we see a new high, but we're not just moving in one fell swoop up, so we'll consolidate whatever, and then we have one last run by the end of the cycle. Maybe we form some bearish divergence in April, May, whatever, between these 2 points, and that's the cycle top. Maybe we go higher than that, and that's the cycle top there. Maybe, you know, this move isn't as big as it looks, but we stop at a lower point, and then we still move up here, whatever it is. It just wouldn't make sense that we stop anywhere in between these two levels, right? It wouldn't make sense that by the end of the cycle we stop in between these two levels. It makes the most sense that we stop either at this level or higher, right? Or this level or higher, right? Sorry, this level or higher. So with all of that in conjunction together, and then assuming what the Bitcoin price is going to be, without really doing any BTC analysis. I've done enough BTC analysis to believe that the price will be I'm sorry, that it will be at $500,000 by the end of the cycle. Let's assume I'm wrong. Let's do that. Let's assume I'm wrong. Let's say we're way off. And Bitcoin, let's keep all the numbers the same for the XCN BTC pair, but change the numbers for Bitcoin. Let's say I'm way off. Let's say Bitcoin goes to 300,000 by the end of the cycle. Let's even cut it in half, 250K by the end of the cycle. I think it'll go to 500. Let's say I'm wrong and it goes to 250. So then we do the same thing, a 10 to 20% drop from there, a 20% drop from 250K. What is that, 50K? So 200,000? $200,000, okay? Let's input these same numbers with $200,000 and see what we come up with, okay? 35 cents. Well, 35 cents. Good minimum, right? Hey, look at that. It makes sense on the US dollar pair. Delete all the chicken scratch. 35 cents is right there at our 1886200 level. It's perfect. And this is the minimum, right? We're taking the 1618, the low end of our cycle ending high expectations, and then we're comparing it with the low end of what Bitcoin could be by the time XCN, because again, Bitcoin, if it tops off at 250K, XCN will top off after, likely with Bitcoin's at a lower price, so not 250 but 200,000. Let's say Bitcoin was at 225K, we put that same number in. 40 cents, which again lines up pretty perfectly there. I think we nailed it on the head, guys. I really do. Minimum target by the end of the cycle is 33 cents, which from here is about a 54x. For anybody who bought the high, it's a bit disappointing, but if you bought the high, you got 7x potential, practically 7x potential, okay? Even if you bought the high, you've got great potential. This is why they say it's not a problem to buy the high as long as you don't sell the low in crypto, right? That's the minimum effect. If we take XCN BTC and we do the 5 zeros, what calculation was that? Where was that here? I think I did it over here, so we're going to have to redo it. Let's do this. We'll put that in again, because that's 30977. That's this level here, the 1886 minimum, right? Because we know we're not going to see new all-time highs versus BTC. We know that this is the, if we don't stop at the golden ratio, that'd be the minimum target there. We take that number times 400,000. Let's divide it by 2, because then that'll give us times 200,000, right? Wouldn't that be right? It's a 61, 62 cent price, which versus US dollars. That way I just don't have to input all the numbers again. I don't want to do that. 62 cents. It's close enough to 77 cents. Again, just making sense. We probably don't stop at 62 cents, but again, if we're assuming some margin of error, maybe we round up. I really feel confident in saying that the minimum target for XCN from here is a 53x. 53x, a lot of sense to be made of a 100x move or more. Something between 80 cents and $1.70, I think, makes the most sense for me by the end of the cycle. Again, final verdict, XCN USD by the end of the cycle, 77 cents to $1.65, let's say. Bare minimum, 43 to 33 cents. And that's all I got. Hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for being here. If you enjoyed the head scratching like I did, then cool. I think it's funny because I started off the video saying that this was going to be boring, but I actually had a really fun time doing this. All right, take care. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.